Settlements that prospered with the discovery of mineral wealth, only to be abandoned once their resources had been plundered. But the Atacama is far from being mined out. Millions of years ago, this desert was covered by a huge inland sea. Over time, the boundless sunshine of the desert dried out the waters, leaving a crystal residue. With no rainfall to dissolve the crystals, other sediments were deposited directly on top. Over many millions of years, huge beds of subterranean salt formed. Sala Grande de Tarapacá is an open-cast mine on the desert coast. It's one of the purest sources of natural salt on the planet. Another mineral brought the Atacama sudden wealth and sudden ruin. This is the town of Chacabuco. It was built in 1924 to facilitate the mining of one of the most lucrative compounds ever dug from the sand: sodium nitrate, otherwise known as Chile saltpeter. Formed over 20 million years by volcanic activity, saltpeter was first mined in the Atacama in the 1820s. It soon became a key ingredient in products like fertilizers and gunpowder. During the First World War, as demand boomed, hundreds of mines and processing plants worked the desert. Industrial towns were thrown up to house workers. Railways were laid down to transport the nitrate powder to the coast for export. In Chacabuco's heyday, Chile was producing 2/3 of all the world's fertilizer. It was hard labor, but the workers flooded in. The town boasted the best amenities money could buy: a plaza, a theater, a hospital, and a church, said to be one of the most beautiful in northern Chile. But the glory days weren't to last. In the 1920s, Germany developed a synthetic saltpeter. It proved just as effective as the natural thing at a fraction of the cost. By the 1930s, the industry here was in dramatic decline. Chile's economy collapsed. Today, the Atacama is littered with abandoned saltpeter towns, nearly 200 of them. But for Chacabuco, economic collapse wasn't the end of the story. The ghost town would be resurrected in a new and dark chapter of Chile's history. On September the 11th, 1973, General Augusto Pinochet ousted Chile's democratic government in a military coup. Backed by the United States, Pinochet moved quickly to consolidate his grip on power by annihilating his socialist opponents. The new regime turned the empty houses of Chacabuco into a concentration camp for political dissidents. "1,800 prisoners were incarcerated here. Students, teachers, professionals, laborers, anyone considered an enemy of the state. In all, under Pinochet, 250,000 people were detained. Behind the barbed wire, under the watchtowers, torture and violence were meted out. But it's taken a lifetime and a group of resolute women to uncover the truth about the most terrible atrocities. They took place outside the camp gates, witnessed only by a guilty few. Violeta Berrios lives in Calama, a city deep in the desert. Alone, with her 5 dogs.
Qué agüita, pero son mi vida. A mí me llenan la vida ellos. No sé qué haría si no tuviera a mi hijo.
Violeta's life wasn't always like this. 40 years ago, she was a young woman in love.
Si era un moreno muy lindo. Mario era un hombre común y corriente, trabajador, pertenecía a un partido de izquierda y eso lo llevó a la tumba.
In September 1973, a Chilean army squad was heading for Calama. They would become known as the Caravan of Death. Led by Army Brigadier General Sergio Ariano Stark, the squad descended on 4 cities in northern Chile. Their mission? To identify socialist sympathizers. Mario was one of those who was targeted.
Hija, venga. Mario fue detenido el 30 de septiembre. Había una subcomisaría y ahí llevaban a todos los detenidos y ahí los torturaban y hacían todo lo que querían. Yo no lo había visto desde el 30 hasta el 13 o 14 de octubre que lo vi. Era un guiñapo humano. O sea, había perdido todo el peso que tenía. Tenía tajitos en la cara, en la frente, en los brazos. Y yo nunca me voy a olvidar, por Dios, Mario, le digo yo, ¿cómo estás? Me dieras el cuerpo, me dijo.
Violeta would never see Mario again. The Caravan of Death had got its man.
Fui a la cárcel a preguntar por Mario y ya Mario no estaba, eran como las 6 de la tarde. Y ahí me fui ante esta familia, la familia Rodríguez. Cuando llego a la casa de la familia Rodríguez, siento llantos, pataletas, gritos y golpeé suavemente y me dice, los mataron, los mataron.
Mario and 22 others from Calama had been murdered. Shot or stabbed, their bodies were thrown into a mass grave in the desert. Grieving wives, mothers, sisters, daughters were desperate to discover their fate. Their anguish forged an unbreakable bond between them all. Meeting in secret, they became known as the Women of Calama. 40 years later, they still come together every week to share their memories. Lorena was just a small child when her father disappeared. She sought comfort from friends, only to find that Pinochet's terror had thrown up barriers of distrust.
Todo así se confabulaba en todas las familias. ¿Cómo te llamas tú? Ah, ¿y tu papá de qué bueno fusilado? Ah, fusilado. Y ahí el linde, al tiro. Por lo menos más de uno de nosotros nos pasó esa situación. Fue terrible.
But the women of Calama would not be intimidated. In secret, they resolved to find the bodies of their loved ones. Just months after the murders, they began to search the desert. It was 17 long years before they found what they were looking for. They dug up the mass grave expecting to exhume bodies. All that they found were fragments.